We're watching those shares of Edison International decline the most in almost 5 years. This comes after its Southern California utility was hit with a lawsuit pointing the finger at its equipment for igniting the deadly wildfires that we've just been speaking about in the LA area. Joining us from its California Emergency Operations Center is Pedro Pizarro, President and CEO of Edison International. And Pedro, very, very difficult times for obviously the residents of Los Angeles, their families, and yourselves, no doubt, as well. First of all, can you give us an update of any estimates you have of the damage?
Yeah, so thank you for having me. And it is a difficult time. And let me just start by saying our hearts just go out to everybody who's been impacted. You were showing footage of Altadena. My wife and I have lived in Pasadena, right next door, for almost 37 years. This isn't just close to home, this is home. And so it's very painful to see this. 19 of our Edison team members have lost their homes. We know many others have across the area. And so I think the damage across the Eaton fire and the Palisades fire is well over 40,000 acres that have been covered with fire. I think you're seeing estimates out there of structure counts, but still early here. And so I'm afraid we're going to hear numbers climb for a bit as an assessment is made. On the electrical side, we had at one point over 500,000 customers out without power because of the extreme winds that our area experienced, up to 90 mile an hour, as much as 100 mile an hour gusts. A little bit of constructive news there. Our team has been able to work very quickly and bring those numbers down. So right now we're sitting around 40,000 customers out, with about 30,000 of those being impacted by public safety power shutoffs. So I really want to give some credit to the firefighters who've worked so tirelessly, the first responders, and our utility workers as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Pedro, I have to ask you though, why did the company have its transmission lines and distribution lines energized at the beginning of the fire, particularly obviously in Eaton?
So we have very clear protocols under which we de-energize lines, and they're part of a broader set of the wildfire mitigation plan that is overseen by a state Office of Energy Infrastructure Safety and approved by them. They're ratified by the Public Utilities Commission. And so there's criteria for when and how we de-energize, and recognize that while de-energizing lines removes fire risk, it creates other risks for our customers and communities. And so that's why the protocols are important. They're dependent on factors like how much fuel there might be on the ground, how wet that or dry that might be, ambient humidity, and importantly, wind speed. Let me focus on the Eaton Canyon fire in particular, because that's the one with the images that you're showing right now, and the largest one in focus within our service territory. There were two sets of lines around the reported origin point. One set of lines were distribution lines, or lower voltage lines that serve the community. Those used covered conductor, insulated wire, and they had been de-energized 2 hours prior to the reported start of the fire. So those were de-energized. We also had transmission lines, higher voltage, on the other side of the canyon. Those were not de-energized, and that's because they had not met the criteria for that. Transmission lines are larger, stronger, and so they can operate safely at higher wind speeds. Maybe one more thing quickly I'll share is that certainly we've seen the video images and photos that are in the media that a number of residents have taken showing flames near our towers. Up to date, we have not seen in our telemetry any indication of an electrical anomaly. And typically when you have a fire caused by electrical infrastructure, you do see a signature, voltage dropping, current increasing. We have not seen that in our study, going back 12 hours before the reported time of the started time of the fire.
Right.
We do see a signature about over an hour after the start. We have not been able to get up close to the line still because of fire agencies are still working in the area. We expect we'll be able to get in shortly, and we'll certainly want to inspect and see if is there some unique event that happened that wasn't picked up by our telemetry. Above all, we will be transparent with our community as we learn more.
So Pedro, I mean, I understand the difficulty of trying to get to these sites while the fires, of course, are still going on. But has there been any efforts at all, either through your own folks or through other authorities, to preserve what could be evidence in these investigations?
Always, Romain. And to the extent that there's any question, You saw that we filed an incident report with our state regulator for the Eaton fire as well as for the Hearst fire. When we do that, we'll do it because it satisfies one of a number of criteria, but we, preserve evidence because we know that there may be alternate theories out there. We have, in fact, believe that a complaint has been announced already for the Eaton fire. We have not been served that yet, so we haven't seen it, but we have the full expectation there may be litigation, and above all, we want to make sure that we preserve the evidence for good, robust investigation.
Well, let me tell you what it says. I mean, our Bloomberg reporters have seen it, and a lot of this will sound familiar. I mean, we've been here before with these wildfires, and your company has been here before with some of those as well. Not just the fact that, or I shouldn't say the fact, excuse me, but the allegation that they're making in this lawsuit that one of your power poles may have caused the fire, but more importantly, some of the longstanding issues with the updating of infrastructure and whether the lack of updating of that infrastructure may have been contributory to any of the fires or the acceleration of those fires.
Well, we haven't seen the complaint yet. Thanks for sharing that with us. We'll obviously study it when we get it. But let me address some of the topics in there. Importantly, we operate under wildfire mitigation plans, again, that are approved by our state regulators and overseen by them. There's a lot of rigor now that frankly wasn't there back in 2017 and 2018 when California first experienced major catastrophic fires. So how we harden our system, how we have deployed over 6,000 miles of insulated wire covered conductor in the last several years, how we deployed other equipment, how we use public safety power shutoffs, how we monitor with high definition cameras and weather stations, all of that operational protocols, that's embodied in these wildfire mitigation plans, again, with very robust oversight from our regulators. Moreover, since 2017 and 2018, the state passed new laws, notably AB 1054, passed in 2019, that really strengthened the regulatory compact, the framework in California for dealing with wildfire. It requires those wildfire mitigation plans. Importantly, it also set up a wildfire mitigation, wildfire liability fund, $21 billion fund, funded partly by customers, partly by shareholders of investor-owned utilities. So there's a pool of $21 billion there so that recognizing that there's extreme weather, if the hardening wasn't enough to prevent that spark, if the great firefighting that we have now in the state didn't contain the fire, we have a mitigation framework to deal with the liability.
But Pedro, were there any anomalies detected by Southern California Edison at that time? Because one of the allegations in the lawsuit are eyewitness accounts of a fire beneath the pole, which they're saying was an active wire. Again, they're saying that. And I'm wondering if there was any evidence on your end for that to be true.
Yeah, Romain, as I shared a minute ago, no. To date, we have not seen that. We have telemetry. We have the voltages, the currents. We've monitored all of that. We have not seen any of the signatures that you typically see when a line causes a fire. But again, we have not been able to get up close. And so we want to do that with assistance from investigators, and we'll be transparent with the public if we find something.
Pedro, you just mentioned that fund up to $1 billion. This is California's inverse condemnation law, which would allow for Edison International to pay even if negligence were not proved. That fund is currently valued at about $14.7 billion. But in a scenario as awful as this, you could imagine that would be depleted really quickly. What would happen in that case? Have you thought about it? Would it be ratepayers and yourselves, utilities, that would have to fund it again?
Yeah, we reassure our investors about this. It's a question we get a lot. So that fund is meant to be $21 billion. You're right, the cash in it is not 21 today, but it has to force a statute. And so the authority that manages that fund has the ability to finance and get access to $21 billion. That amount was estimated when the fund was set up to last for at least 10 years, 94% probability of lasting for 10 years based on fire history. We don't know yet what the damage will be from the Eaton fire or whether liability will ultimately be assigned to our utility. But I will say that the law also has a provision that's meant to first protect customers, right, through the wildfire mitigation plans and the accountability for the utilities. Secondly, the fund is there to have cash to ultimately help individuals impacted by the fire. But importantly, when the fund was set up, when the law was set up, there was a recognition that utilities, A, needed to be held accountable, but B, needed to have an ability to remain financially healthy. And so the law also includes provisions for a cap on the liability that our shareholders might face were we to be found not just liable, but imprudent. Because the standard here is not perfection, it's prudency. And just from an investor perspective, if you look at our market value, we have dropped about between $8 and $9 billion in market cap since the beginning of the fire. Our liability cap is $3.9 billion. So part of our job right now is to make sure that we're communicating with investors the details, the facts of this law, and how it helps to support the financial health of our utility.
Well, I appreciate you answering some tough questions, Pedro. I know you have a lot of work to do as the head of this company, but my final question is not to you as a corporate executive, but as a resident of Los Angeles. We spoke with a couple folks on our show on Friday who were in the Palisades area, who lost their homes in the Palisades area. They're very pessimistic about whether that area and some of the surrounding areas will ever be rebuilt. They're concerned about the cost and the logistics of it, and saying that short of a massive federal intervention of some kind, that these communities, at least for the foreseeable future, may be no more. Do you have any hope, any optimism that we will see a coordinated rebuilding effort that will get these communities back at least close to what they were before?
I do. And the reason is there are real American lives at stake here and livelihoods. California and Southern California is frankly a wonderful place. I've lived here for nearly 37 years, and I know that the business community and government are going to band together to bring our communities back, whether it's the Palisades, it's Altadena, other areas impacted. So certainly as Edison, we're ready to roll up our sleeves. We announced that we're committing $1 million of shareholder funding towards charitable efforts to help rebuild the area. I know other companies are as well. Governor Newsom has come out on record already talking about wanting to expedite processes and provide support here. And so we're looking forward to working with our neighbors. This is our home, and we're here to stay, and we're going to help.